Hi, I'm Rabbi Austin Zoot, and welcome back to the channel. We've started this conversation about what does it mean to rebrand Judaism, to sell a different form of Judaism and religion in general in a way that's more compelling to the modern consumer. Now, we often don't like using this language of sales because it feels commercialized. It almost feels like we're belittling the thing by talking about it in this language of consumption. But at the end of the day, we're talking to real human beings. We live in a world that has been consumerized, and we have to live with the fact that if we're going to compete as spaces of value, we have to deliver a message that is both in the language of the people and also transcending the language of our everyday. What that means is we have to sell a product, but we also have to sell a product we believe in. And I want to talk a little bit today about who are the people selling this product. Right? If we're talking about sales, there must be a salesperson. When we think of salespeople, most of the time, the first image that comes to mind is of a used car dealer. This is usually someone who comes across a little scuzzy, who's trying to sell you something you maybe don't want and maybe don't need because they are trying to benefit from your consumption. Whether or not you benefit from the product is almost irrelevant to their having made money. That's very different than what we know in the Judaism and in the religion that most of us try and sell. If you talk to a Jewish professional, most of them would say that they're selling a product they deeply believe in. As a matter of fact, most of them are so committed to their own Jewish identity that they use the product as much as they sell it, if not more. Ask any Jewish professional why they love what they do, and you'll see that glimmer in their eye, that spark of spirituality, of holiness that comes out to say, not only do I love what I do, but I love it so much I want to share it with others. It's one of the reasons that Jewish professionals are willing to tolerate the fact that most of them can't possibly be paid what they're worth. Because it's not about money. It's about the impact we get to make on people's lives. It's about the way we get to make people feel. I was recently reading a book called Fanocracy, which you'll see right here. And in this book, the writers discuss what it means to turn something from a product or service into a culture, into an entire concept that people dedicate their lives to. It's a really interesting book, and it really helps to contextualize how we engage with things in our lives that are bigger than just the stuff we do or the stuff we use. In it, there are so many examples of products and companies that go much further than selling a product in order to engage us in the spiritual work of identity and of pushing ourselves further. If we can't connect to what it is that we're trying to involve, then somebody's selling us something that doesn't bring us a lot of value. And Fanocracy argues, this book offers, that if you're not invested in the product, you're just selling stuff. It was a really interesting perspective, and one that we in our community certainly can relate to and can understand. We know what it's like to sell something that we believe in so profoundly. And that's a really important piece of the puzzle. As we continue to explore this idea of how do we sell a brand of Judaism that is compelling, we also need to engage with the idea that Judaism is worth buying. That means we, as Jewish professionals, have to sit there and ask the question, would I, as a consumer of Judaism, enjoy a service like that? Would I, as a participant in the ritual, find that meaningful? If the answer is no, that's a level of dissonance we have to wrap our heads around. Sometimes that's because I'm just one Jew, right? I'm a rabbi to a community full of a lot of people with a lot of diverse needs. There are plenty of things we do in my synagogue that may not speak to me uniquely as a Jew, but that speak to my mission as a rabbi, that speak to somebody in my congregation who deserves to be served in that way, and I'd be willing to do anything, even if it's not the brand of Judaism that I might particularly enjoy. After all, I'm a 29-year-old rabbi serving a congregation for which many, many ages are represented. And so it makes sense for me to sell a wide spectrum of Judaism. But that's very different than subjecting people to a brand of Judaism that I know doesn't work, and that I don't feel good about, and that I know nobody's particularly asking for. I have the privilege of working for an organization that asks those questions, that says, how can we do this in the way that best speaks to our community and best speaks to our people? But there are a lot of organizations out there that are so stuck in the rut of this is what we do, that we haven't stopped to ask the question, why? And what can we do instead? Now, in that, I'm not telling you there are any organizations that are doing this perfectly. As a matter of fact, it's impossible to do this perfectly. The world changes too rapidly for anybody to be constantly in lockstep with exactly how the future is going to develop. That's not the goal. The goal is to not get so distracted by the everyday that we lose sight of our obligation to continue to have our ears open and our eyes open to look and see and hear all of the things that we need to do in order to remain viable. We as salespeople have to remember that we're also consumers, that we're selling a product we believe in, and therefore we should sell a product that we would want to consume. If you're receiving a product from your clergy or from your Jewish institutional leadership that you're questioning, ask them. You'll get one of two responses. Either A, you'll hear the excitement and enthusiasm and passion that says, yes, this is why we're doing it, and you'll be sold because you'll be part of the Fanocracy. Or B, you might hear a little bit of dejection, a little bit of, I'm not sure why we do this. It's hard, and we got to figure something else out. And what a great place for us to start our sacred work of continuing to revitalize Judaism and religion in general, to continue to build a brand of our tradition that works both forever and also for this very moment. What makes Judaism so beautiful is that it is equal parts eternal and relevant. It is equal parts timely and timeless. But it requires our work to sell a version of Judaism that feels right to us and that also feels right to the changes that our people need to see. If this video was compelling, please share it with others. This conversation is done best when our little community turns into a great big community with lots of diverse voices. Share a comment below with what are some things you want to see our Jewish future look like? Where are some places you want to be better served? Like this video so that you can see more of my content and continue to engage in our community, because we're building something new. We're continuing to build something that will bring Judaism into our next decade and beyond. And we're continuing to play with how do we meet people where they are, and how do we give a version of Judaism that lifts them to someplace new. Thank you for joining me, and have a great day. We'll see you next week.